Okay. Welcome to Kannapolis City Council meeting tonight for April the 13th, 2026. We have a call to order here, and we're going to ask Mr. Darrell Jackson to please lead us in the pledge.
Let's all stand and honor our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Council, we have an agenda in front of us. What is your pleasure?
Move for approval, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Ms. Dixon with the second. All in order, if you will, please, all in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, that's unanimous. Speakers from the floor, Ms. Skaggs.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So as a reminder, if you'd like to address City Council, there are cards located outside of these doors. I need you to fill out these cards. You'll have 4 minutes to speak, and you'll see the lights on the podium and in front of you. They'll light up yellow when you're nearing the end of your speaking time. The first person I have to speak is Lottie Forney.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilman. My name is Lottie Forney. Do you still need addresses? Still need
You
my
can
address?
say your address. Yes, please. Thank you.
1668 Barbara Ann Circle, Kannapolis. I just wanted to rise to speak on the park that was planned for the east side of the city. I'm on the east side of the city as well as a lot of other people. I think it would be well served to follow up with that park. And also, on that side of town, I live off Little Texas Road, and I would like to know what is the progress on the sidewalks there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next card I have is for Sophia Wilkerson.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Sophia Wilkerson. I reside at 314 Esther Circle, Kannapolis, which is in the Little Texas community. And that's why I stand before you tonight. First of all, I want to thank you all for such a wonderful job you're doing. But as you discuss your 26-27 budget, and in particular funding for the East Side Park on Midlake Road, and the Little Texas Sidewalk, and transportation services that might be affected or cut. We really need all of these services in our community because there's nothing over there. They always talk about a healthy Kannapolis and walking, and I see all of these pictures, but I never see anybody walking on the east side. Everything is over here. That's because we have nowhere to walk that's safe. So if you would consider and discuss this in your budget, in particular, those three things, the East Side Park, Little Texas Sidewalk, and transportation services, and keep the members of our community abreast as to what's going on. Because I have numerous, maybe dozens of people to call me to ask me what is going on with the sidewalk because we don't see anything. And I know we get a water bill or a utility bill every month. If you could just give us some updates in that paper as to what's going on, because people are really getting disenchanted with the city because it's beautiful over here, it's beautiful over there, but like exercising and getting out for a healthier lifestyle, we don't have that privilege right now over there. So as you look at your budget for 26-27 and thereafter, please, please, in particular, look at the funding for our park, our sidewalks, and our transportation services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next card I have is Daryl Hinnett.
Good evening, Daryl Hinnett, 1106 Sunset Drive, Kannapolis, North Carolina. Thank you for your time. Proverbs 31:8-9 commands believers to act as advocates for the vulnerable, stating, "Speak up for those who can't speak for themselves, for the rights of all the destitute. Speak up and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and the needy." I'm here tonight to speak up for the riders of CK Transit. In 2024, they paid 415,000 trips. In 2025, they paid 399,000 trips. To minimize the need for a bus system, some voices have suggested that that doesn't mean 400,000 people. It really doesn't. But it surely does mean hundreds of thousands of poor and needy people. In Kannapolis, why do you ride a bus? Because there's no other choice. They cannot afford a car or transportation otherwise. They use transit to get to work, to go to school, to get groceries, and to go to health care appointments. Why would this council act to make their lives more desperate? Some of you have professed to want to help the homeless. The effort to kill transit in Kannapolis will create many more homeless people. For every adult who rides the bus, there is 1 to 3 children in that family. Why negatively impact those kids? Look at the ridership of CK Rider. Approximately 90% of them are African Americans or Hispanics. Racism is defined as attitudes, behaviors, or policies that foster unfair treatment or systemic disadvantage for specific ethnic groups. Toward the end of each council meeting, at least one of you regularly mentions how transparent you want to be with the citizens. Your mayor sent a letter to the mayor of Concord about 6 weeks ago telling Concord how Kannapolis Council had decided not to support CK Rider in the future. This was decided in closed session without any discussions with the citizens of Kannapolis. You didn't review all the options. You knew, and your manager knew, that on-demand transportation would require a significant investment in additional funds, but that is inconsistent with your goals to cut taxes. You should be honest with the citizens. You have been told that there's no way to cut taxes without a meat axe approach to programs. You believe that nobody cares about the riders of transit, and you believe that you'll get very little pushback. So you are cutting them recklessly. This is about bad choices. You committed to moving $2 million to modify the Wells Fargo building to a welcome center and a history museum. That $2 million could pay for transit and to build that East Side Park that was just mentioned. It is ridiculous to choose to send $500,000 back to the state that you received as a grant for that park. Lastly, we know what is really about this commitment is to a failed policy of Cabarrus County has been adopting for years. Party bosses believe that cut taxes is the solution for everything. Now the county finds itself in a deficit for the next year's budget and budgets to come. So in addition, they have strangled school systems so that school systems estimate now that $1 billion is needed for schools. Kannapolis citizens suffer when most schools in the northwest part of the county have attendance caps and can't get schools built in our area. This council chooses to follow the same failed policy. Kannapolis citizens, I'm speaking to you. I'm speaking to you directly. Stand up and don't let this council intentionally follow a failed policy that was dictated to them by a party boss. Call your friends, call your neighbors, and let them know the bad choices this council is making. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last card I have is Phil Goodman.
Phil Goodman, 1005 Central Drive, Kannapolis. Got 2 different ways to go here tonight, and I'm trying to decide how. The first thing is I get calls almost weekly, multiple calls, not because I'm someone special, just because I know some folks in the town. And they ask me about things, and if I don't know the answer, I'll call someone sitting right up here and get the answer, or you'll refer me to someone else. I can tell you as a response to that, unlike what others may think, I find that most of the people in Kannapolis are thrilled to death with the city council that we now have. They're seeing fast reaction to situations. They're seeing practical decisions. And I just wish that when people come to this microphone, instead of just giving their personal opinion, they would state facts of all the facts. For example, the $500,000, why was it given back? There was a reason for that, and it was practical and it was good business sense to do it. I particularly believe that we're in much better shape now than we've been in the last 15 or 20 years. You folks are doing a phenomenal job, and when you're doing a good job, you're going to make people mad. You're going to make people angry. Everything is on video now, on YouTube now. I've had so many people say that it is wonderful that they can see the city council meeting without having to come up here. So I would congratulate you. I think you're doing a phenomenal job. Everything is not perfect, but I do believe, from my understanding, fire trucks, a fire tower, and other emergency equipment takes precedence over other things that have to be done. So I appreciate all that you're doing, and I think I represent a large majority of the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the last card I had, Mayor.
I think Mr. Spitzer's going to do it to us again. He's going to be some kind of penalty or something for this. They won't.
No cookies for you.
Thank you. I really had not planned to speak tonight, but I feel compelled to. Last meeting, I thanked you for the policy that you put in place in terms of the prayer at the beginning of the meetings. I thought it was well crafted. I thought it was ecumenical in its nature. I was saddened to see, in all due respect, I was saddened to see that in the invocation, the reference to Jesus leaves out a whole swath of this community who does not believe in Christianity per se. And I would look to the future, as is the case in many of the boards that I sit on, in many of the activities that I attend, that the invocation is to God. That does leave out some, but a much smaller number. I would like to see that done going forward so that all of the people in Kannapolis can join in the prayer comfortably. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, I did get one more card, and it is for Kay Grant.
Good evening, Council and the City of Kannapolis. My name is Kay Grant, address 816 China Grove Road, Kannapolis, North Carolina, 28083. I'm coming up here as a city resident with 4 children. I'm deeply passionate about the opportunity presented several years ago about the opportunity for a park on the east side of the city, as well as the sidewalks and the cut of transportation. This initiative is the utmost importance and a necessity, as it will provide our families with residing in the area with greater accessible to a park in close proximity. Currently, for people that live on the east side of Kannapolis, we have to travel 2.5 to 3.5 miles to the closest park, which is Veterans Park, Village Park, or Baker's Creek. That is something that I would look into when it comes to convenience, especially with the cost of living and the economy taking a huge hike. With the park being in close proximity for the families that live on the east side, this provides us with an opportunity to enjoy some of the luxuries that other residents on the other side of Kannapolis get to enjoy more frequently. People on the east side have to consider not only distance, cost to get there, but activities that take place. When those activities take place, it sometimes limits us on what we have access to. So we have events that take place that are wonderful, but what about those who don't want to go to those events and don't want to be in those kind of crowds? What about our health and our well-being? Having the ability to go outside, enjoy, spend time with your family, or just, for instance, our aging population having a place safely to go and enjoy themselves, that's important for our health and our mental health. I believe this opportunity presents a significant advantage for our new residents who are coming. We've grown in the matter of years. We're at about 60,000 residents. You have people coming here, you want things to attract them. So when you have families moving here, these are things that they consider: grocery, gas, schools, parks, health, and other necessities that are very much important to them. If you take this opportunity away, what does it look like for us, especially when we really do need other things in this area that benefit the residents? We're the ones who pay the tax dollars. We're the ones who invest just as much as you all. This is important to us. These kids being able to be kids and be free and enjoy, that's something that probably all of you had the ability to do. But now it's getting dangerous. You can't play in the streets. People don't believe in stopping. People don't believe in being cautious of those areas. Having the parks, having sidewalks, that's important. It cuts back on accident, cuts back on someone getting hurt or someone not paying attention because you're separating the two. Please consider what it looks like to our future kids, your grandkids, or those who may enjoy that opportunity and the luxury, especially our aging population. Now, speaking with 37 seconds, I'm a social worker. We have a lot of clients on the east side of Kannapolis. A lot of them don't have transportation. A lot of them don't have access to Medicaid transportation. So if you cut our transportation for them, what does that look like? Do you really care about our aging population who paved the way for us to get to where we are now? I need you all to take those things and those ideas and my opinion in consideration, as well as other residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's it?
I believe that's it. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right, we'll move ahead now to proclamations and recognitions. We've got 3 different proclamations tonight, and we're going to start with Ms. Berry.
Could Holly Morton come up and join me, please? Oh, and her co-workers. Only got 2 hands, but I want to thank all 3 of y'all. Hello, thank you very much. Sure. Okay.
It should be on.
Testing? Okay, okay. I want to say I'm very glad that I was asked to read this proclamation, because last year I participated in the Citizens Fire Academy with Kannapolis, and one of our nights, we spent the whole night or the afternoon with telecommunicators. And I always wondered what they did up there. I knew it had to be hectic, but I had no idea. They have 2 or 3 screens, the calls are coming in, you got people hectic, and they keep their calm. 5 screens, sorry. But they're calm, they speak to everybody in the most professional manner, and it was just amazing to witness what really goes on. So my level of respect has grown tremendously for what y'all do. Thank you. It takes a lot of dedication and a whole lot of patience. So, from the Office of the City Council, Kannapolis, North Carolina, proclamation, National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. Whereas public safety telecommunicators are the vital link between the public and emergency services, serving as the first point of contact in times of crisis. whereas these highly trained professionals answer emergency and non-emergency calls, dispatch law enforcement, fire, and emergency medical service personnel, and provide critical instructions that save lives and protect property, whereas the public safety telecommunicators demonstrate extraordinary patience, skill, and dedication while working under the intense pressure and often handling life-threatening situations, whereas their work requires specialized training, professionalism, and a commitment to public service that is essential to the safety and well-being of our community, and whereas the safety of our public officers, firefighters, emergency medical personnel, and the public depends significantly on the accuracy, judgment, and reliability of public safety telecommunicators, and whereas the safety of our police officers, firefighters, emergency medical personnel, and the public depends significantly on the accuracy, judgment, and reliability of public safety telecommunicators. Now, therefore, the City of Kannapolis, North Carolina, does hereby proclaim the week of April 12th through the 18th, 2026 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Kannapolis, and encourage all residents to join in honoring these dedicated individuals for their service and commitment to protecting our community. In witness thereof, I, Mayor Georgia Douglas Wilson, on behalf of Kannapolis City Council, has caused the Great Seal of the City of Kannapolis to be affixed this 13th day of April 2026. Thank you very much. Whoever do. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Diane. Let them come around. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Honorary. Thank you very much. Ms. Dixon has the next one for us.
Thank you. I'd like to have Joe Crapster and the staff from Duke Energy to please come forward and stand with. So I believe all of us in the city of Kannapolis benefit from the services that Duke Energy provides. We go into our homes and we flip on the lights and there, let there be light. And so we're so grateful to you and your staff for the service that you provide on a daily basis, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So from the Office of City Council, Kannapolis, North Carolina, this proclamation reads, National Line Worker Appreciation Day. Whereas line workers play a critical role in maintaining and repairing the electrical infrastructure that powers our homes, businesses, schools, and hospitals. And whereas these highly skilled professionals work in challenging and often hazardous conditions, including severe weather, natural disasters, and emergency situations to ensure reliable delivery of electricity. And whereas line workers frequently put their own safety at risk to restore power and support their communities during times of greatest need, and whereas their work requires extensive training, technical expertise, and a steadfast commitment to safety, provision, and service, and whereas the contributions of line workers are essential to the economic vitality, public safety, and quality of life in our community, and whereas it is important to recognize and honor the dedication, courage, and professionalism of these individuals who often work behind the scenes without widespread recognition. Therefore, the City Council of the City of Kannapolis, North Carolina, does hereby proclaim April 18, 2026 as National Line Worker Appreciation Day in Kannapolis and encourages all residents to recognize and thank line workers for their invaluable service and commitment to keeping our community powered and connected. In witness thereof, Mayor George Douglas Wilson, on behalf of Kannapolis City Council, has caused the Great Seal of the City of Kannapolis to be affixed this 13th day of April, 2026. Please join me in saluting.
Thank you for everything. Yes, sir. Thank you, young man. You look like you can still play. I can't. Good seeing you, Rob. Yes, sir. Thank you. Now, Ms. Hatchell.
Would Nina Glass join me up here? Hey, buddy. Nina, I just want to thank you for bringing this to our attention because I think it's something that many in our community struggle with, and oftentimes it's a silent pain that a lot of people don't recognize. So thank you for bringing the awareness to Kannapolis today. From the Office of City Council, Kannapolis, North Carolina, Proclamation, National Infertility Week. Whereas National Infertility Awareness Week is observed to raise awareness about infertility, a disease that affects millions of individuals and couples across the United States and around the world. And whereas infertility is a medical condition recognized by leading health organizations impacting people regardless of age, gender, race, social and economic status, or geographic location. And whereas individuals and families facing infertility often experience significant emotional, physical, and financial challenges and may encounter stigma or misunderstanding in their journeys. And whereas increasing public awareness and understanding of infertility can help foster compassion, reduce stigma, and encourage those affected to seek appropriate medical care and support. And whereas advances in medical science and reproductive health have provided many pathways to parenthood, including assisted reproductive technologies, while highlighting the ongoing need for the equitable access to care. And whereas it is important to recognize and support all individuals and families navigating infertility while promoting policies that improve access to diagnosis, treatment, and emotional support services. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Kannapolis, North Carolina, does hereby proclaim April 20th through the 26th, 2026, as National Infertility Awareness Week in Kannapolis, and encourage all citizens to support those affected and help create a more compassionate and informed community. Thank you.
Okay, Council, we have a consent agenda now. What is your pleasure on this?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Second, Mr. Payne. All in favor, if you'll please raise your hand. It's unanimous, okay. Let's move on to the business agenda. Mr. Smith, I believe, has a report for us.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thank you for your time this evening. I got a few items for you, and I'll try to make them as expedient and as smoothly as I possibly can. Fortunately, none of these involve zoning issues that the pastor prayed for earlier, so you're okay on that. So, the first item we have on your agenda tonight is related to a honorary bridge designation. And first on the list there, I've got the checklist that we use for this. I think we circulated that to you last week, just so you kind of have an idea of what staff has to do to present these to DOT. We've done two previous bridge namings, honorary namings, Corrine Cannon being one and Linda Johnson being the other. One has been approved by DOT, the other one's forthcoming with DOT's board. But we do have one before you tonight as well, requested by the family and community. It's for the Lane Street Bridge at Interstate 85. And the request we have before you tonight is to adopt a resolution requesting the honorary designation of the Lane Street Bridge at Interstate 85 to the Officer Roger Dale Carter Bridge. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have, Mayor.
So does anyone have a question? No questions, okay. At this moment, if the family would like to speak, I'm going to make an opportunity for you to come if you would like. It's up to you.
I spoke to Mr. Carter. He said enough in the letter, but if you wanted to hear anything from him, certainly let him know.
It's up to the family. Okay.
Roger Dale Carter was my baby brother, Bodge. He was raised with my children because he was so much younger than me. My wife and I, we worked in Cannon Mills. I went to work in 58 and worked in Cannon Mills till it closed. And we lived in Kannapolis, but we couldn't get a bigger mill house, so we had to move. So we bought a little place. But our heart was always here in Kannapolis. I was in that A.L. Brown marching band, and I was so proud of that. And Roger Dale, like I said, he was raised with my kids. He was more like my son than my brother. And on Christmas cards, he would say, "Thank you, Bodge, for being a daddy and a brother." And then the bridge situation came up, and I saw they was building a new bridge down there, and I mentioned it to Vicki Graham, and she said, there's some other people interested in that, and I said, well, we don't want to mess with that then. So it was suggested that the bridge over Interstate 63 be named in his recognition. And I'm just honored to be even here tonight to speak to y'all. I had no idea this was coming up till today. And we would love for him to receive this recognition if it's desirable for the city council. And I guess that's about all I can say right now. I'm all for it, and I hope y'all will consider it, and I thank you for even considering it. Thank you.
Council, on the resolution to name the Lane Street Bridge, Officer Roger Dale Carter Bridge.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Mr. Jackson.
I'll second it.
Ms. Hatchell.
Next item on your agenda, Mayor, is a voluntary annexation request for 6304 and 6320 Mooresville Road and 6165 Pagemont Road. This may look familiar to you because it was on your agenda back in February, but it got pulled because the previous property owner decided they didn't want to be a part of the annexation until the property actually sold. So we now have the new property owners. Phil Hamill and Sky Hamill have made the petition that's before you tonight. It does involve 3 parcels. The acreage is approximately 109.166 acres. It's considered a non-contiguous annexation. It is located in our future growth area of the city, and it is proposed for a golf course development. It'd be a par 3 course, very well designed. We've already seen schematics for it and everything too. This kind of gives you an idea of where it's at. Mooresville Road near Styrwell Road. The area that's more gray on the maps there is the existing city limits. And of course, this property across the street from the existing city limits in that particular area there, very close by. This is a survey of the property. Had 3 parcels involved in the original annexation here. The request before you tonight is to hold a public hearing, and then certainly I'll be glad to answer any questions you have before or after the public hearing, Mayor.
Do we have any questions from Mr. Smith before we go into this public hearing? Mr. Jackson.
Richard, is there room for residential growth out there around it?
There is, and there's actually some subdivision lots that are proposed for this site. It will not have sewer. It'll have city water, but would not have city sewer out there.
And approximately how many of those, do you know?
Roughly between 15 and 20, depends on the overall soil testing and such, because it will be septic system out there, so.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? We need a public hearing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to open the public hearing. If you want to speak on this topic, please come, and if not, we'll go forward, but this opportunity now is to speak. All right, I don't think anybody wants to speak, so I'm going to close it. Okay, council, we need a motion to extend the corporate limits. Mr. Payne?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jackson, all right. Got it? Diane? Yeah, okay. All right, I think we're good. Yes, well, everybody voted, I'm sorry. Okay, now, I think this is going to be a kind of an involved presentation, Mr. Anderson, so here we go.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I want to kind of give you a quick background before we introduce the consultants to talk through the water and wastewater master plan and CIP update. Several months ago, the city undertook updating our existing master plan and looking at that long-range water and wastewater capacity needs, and also looking at upfitting and just general operations and maintenance, rehabilitation on our water and sewer system. What you're going to see today from the water and wastewater consultants is going to be a condensed version of what was shared in the retreat, just because that was several hours of glorious water and sewer stuff. So our water and our wastewater consultants are right back here. Our wastewater consultant is Jonathan Williams. He's with Garver. And our water consultant is Adam Kiker with LKC Engineering. Also in the room is Wildan and Davenport, representing our financial and our rate side. They'll speak at the end after we kind of go through the technical pieces of wastewater and water capacity. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Jonathan Williams to discuss wastewater.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you for having me this evening. Again, my name is Jonathan Williams, and I am Garver's Engineering's water and wastewater practice lead for the state of North Carolina. So it's a pleasure to be with you, and we appreciate the opportunity to have the chance to work with your utility on helping plan for the next 20 years into the future of Kannapolis. So I'm going to talk tonight a little bit about the CIP process and the evaluation and how we came up with the CIP for your overall wastewater system. And then my counterpart, Adam Kiker with LKC, will share information on the water side for your utility. So we'll dive right in. Really, the projections, the basis of this plan is built around your Move Kannapolis Forward 2030 plan, and that's what we use to update wastewater flow projections. You'll see on the presentation here, there was a previous master plan that the Water and Sewer Authority of Cabarrus County had developed several years back that came up with projections through the year 2050 of wastewater flow and wastewater treatment needs that would be needed here for Kannapolis. And obviously, as you know, in that time, things have changed. You've continued to grow, and you've also adopted a new comprehensive plan. And so what we've done now is taken that previous work and then merged that with the future land use plan to project what the anticipated sewer capacity needs are going to be over the next 10 and 20 years. And so you'll see here, basically we show growing from about 4.61 million gallons per day, or MGD, of projected wastewater flow in the current environment, to, by the year 2030, needing 7.15 MGD, and that's showing aggressive growth over the next several years. A lot of that can be attributed to the land use plan and development that you already have on the books, development that is currently ongoing, or development that may be waitlisted for additional sewer capacity. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. And then by the year 2040, according to your Move Kannapolis Forward 2030 plan, extrapolating that growth out. By 2040, we look at needing just over 9 MGD of sewer treatment capacity. And then finally, almost 11 million gallons by 2050. I want to really focus, though, on the year 2030 because those are the near-term needs. Those are the kind of the immediate projects that are going to be needed by Kannapolis to meet that growing sewer demand. So the master plan looked at not only the collection system, but also treatment needs. I want to talk specifically, though, about your collection system. So those are all the sewer pipes, the lift stations, everything like that that's collecting that sewer to ultimately transfer that to the Water and Sewer Authority of Cabarrus County. And so basically what we did was we were able to identify and then prioritize those collection system capital improvement projects. We went through a 4-stage prioritization effort, basically with Tier 1 priority projects being the most needed, most pressing projects, and then Tier 4 being the ones that were maybe less of an immediate concern. And so from that, we also determined that by the year 2050, Kannapolis could require up to 6.36 million gallons per day of additional treatment capacity. And so what that really shows is in the near term, by the year 2030, you're going to need about 2.5 million gallons more treatment capacity than you currently have. And then looking out into the future, looking at needing 6.36 million gallons per day more than the current treatment capacity. And so while we've looked at the collection system, we've come up with projects that are going to help address capacity needs as well as a recurring investment into rehabilitation of your existing sewer system, because obviously those pipes in the ground aren't getting any younger. And so there has to be continual investment into the existing system to make sure it will last into the future as well. But on the other side of it too, we also have to look at what are those future treatment needs. And so we looked at 3 different scenarios that were considered to address the wastewater treatment capacity concerns. The first is a continued partnership with the Water and Sewer Service or Water and Sewer Authority of Cabarrus County, or WASAC, at your Rocky River Regional Wastewater Treatment expansion. And so that looked at a phase expansion of the Kannapolis allocation from the Rocky River Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant. Of course, you have a portion of the treatment capacity at that plant. And that expansion that would be coming up is, you're going through an expansion right now that by the year 2027, you're going to get additional sewer capacity, right at 1 million gallons per day of additional treatment capacity. You have just under 1 million gallons per day of remaining capacity from that plant. So you're looking at about 2 million gallons per day. 1.8 or so. And what you saw from the previous projections, though, there's still a little bit of a gap there. And that's what I want to talk about as well, because this would be an additional expansion of 2 million gallons per day at the Rocky River facility. And that 2 million gallon per day expansion, though, you would only get a portion of that, your prorated portion of that. The other thing about that is that plant at that point, with that next expansion that would come up, has to have nutrient removal upgrades to it for the entire plant. And so the cost per gallon of investment in that is extraordinarily high because of those nutrient removal upgrades that are going to happen for the overall plant. Okay, so keep that in mind. The next is to connect to Salisbury Rowan Utilities and divert a portion of wastewater flow back to SRU to be treated at Salisbury Rowan Utilities wastewater treatment plant. What that would be conversion of the Kannapolis Crossing wastewater lift station to pump flow back to SRU for treatment, and that would include converting the lift station, capital buy-in to Salisbury Rowan Utilities for that portion of capacity that you need, and then wholesale sewer treatment costs. I know Mr. Anderson shared with you at your workshop some of what those costs broke down to. And again, while it's very cheap to connect to SRU on the capital side, the cost for a wholesale agreement with them is still going to be fairly high, making these first 2 options cost-wise relatively similar cost per gallon of wastewater treatment plant capacity. And then the final one is looking at a joint Kannapolis-Landis-owned wastewater treatment plant. And that would be a new greenfield wastewater treatment plant that would be jointly owned by both Kannapolis and Landis of approximately 1.6 million gallons per day, with Kannapolis getting 800,000 gallons per day, or half of that capacity. That would be contingent upon an approval of a new NPDES permit from NCDEQ. That's probably the biggest challenge, but certainly not insurmountable. But the key here is on a dollar per gallon basis, is that cost is significantly less. It's about $2 less per 1,000 gallons than the other two options, okay? So the key here, though, I think, is that a combination phased approach is recommended to combat Kannapolis' sewer treatment capacity concerns. And so what that means is you're going to need more than just a one solution. You're really going to have to look at combining some of these solutions. And so as I mentioned earlier, you'll see the Wasac Phase 4 expansion is ongoing in construction. That will come online in 2027. That will get you additional capacity. You also have a right to purchase some of Charlotte Water's capacity for sewer treatment at the Wasac plant, which would allow you to meet some of the additional sewer capacity concerns. So that comes online next year. By 2028, you could conceivably have a connection to SRU, but albeit at that higher cost. And then by 2031, you could have a Landis Kannapolis wastewater treatment plant online and operable. That's that additional 800,000 gallons per day of capacity. Okay, so those really start to address the near-term concerns. The next expansions at Wasac, though, get considerably more expensive. And the reason why is because they're larger expansions. Wasac would propose to expand in 9 million gallon per day increments. And so you would be a prorated portion of about 28% of that capacity. So it would get you significant additional capacity. But because those expansion phases are so large, they represent significant capital costs going into the future. So all of that to say is there's a lot of investment that would need to happen to continue to provide sewer capacity for future growth that aligns with your comprehensive plan. And so I think for the board, the options to consider are, do you continue to aggressively follow your comprehensive land use plan? Is there a throttling of that? Is there some combination of that that helps you get to the ultimate goal of continuing to grow Kannapolis, but doing it at an affordable measure and one that you feel comfortable with? And so with that, I'm going to turn it over. I'll invite Alex back up, Mr. Anderson, and appreciate your time, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. If council has any questions for the wastewater consultant, we'd be happy to take them. And if not, we can move right on into water.
Any questions? All right.
Thank you. So again, this is Mr. Adam Kiker with LKC Engineering. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could add, one of the things that I'd like to just bring to everyone's attention that certainly Jonathan pointed out is what you just heard and what you will hear are all based upon our land use plan. So, and that's going to be the theme that you're going to hear this evening. It's based upon your current land use plan. So I think that's an important part to understand and have some conversation relative to if you choose or want to make modifications. We probably need to hear some of that this evening so we can plan appropriately if there's thoughts from council. So I just wanted to point out that again.
Okay.
Very good. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. We enjoyed working on this project with Alex and Gerald and your team, and thankful for the opportunity to work together with John and his team. I'm Adam with LKC. We've been working with Wilmer and Alex for the better part of a decade on water and sewer projects. We were tasked with covering the water part of the master plan, and similar to what John did, I'll give an overview. I recognize you've seen a lot of the details, really exciting details that keep you up at night. So we're going to hit the high spots today and then answer any questions you have. So when our process for the water master plan, we kind of broke this down into 4 tranches. And I'll talk briefly about each of the four. The first being, what is your current water supply and what is the projected need? And if there's a gap there, how do we tackle that, similar to what John covered with your sewer? The second was a scrub of the 2030 comp plan, making sure that your water system has the components in it that are needed to support the type of land use that the comp plan recommends, especially things like your activity centers at certain intersections or certain hotspots of the city, making sure you had the appropriate infrastructure in place. The third was known rehabilitation efforts. These are things in your system that are you're going to have to address at some point, and the cost is too large to really budget for. So what we do is we wrap those up into capital projects of certain sizes. We'll cover some of those. And then the last is there was interest, I think, among staff and you as a council about evaluating the potential to extend service along roads or neighborhoods that don't currently have service, that maybe they're in the city limits, maybe not, but they're kind of inside your general service boundary, but don't have water service at the moment. So those are the four buckets. We'll talk about water supply first, and just a brief a kind of background here. Your current available supply, forgive me for the tabs not lining up, is calculated at 15.6 million gallons per day. You have four sources that you have capacity to allocate, the largest of which is your water plant that you own and operate, which is shown at the top there. The other three are different sources. Cottle Creek is coming from the reservoir. Second Creek actually comes from up near the Yadkin River. And then, of course, you have access to a portion of the water purchased from the city of Albemarle. I will note that the biggest of those four, your water plant, there is a little bit of grayness to that capacity. There have been some reports recently that we've reviewed with your team that indicate that 8.5 MGD really should be evaluated more closely to make sure you feel comfortable with that number, and if not, make sure that you're adjusting accordingly. Now, so a total available supply of 15.6 MGD. So what's our projected and your team's projected 30-year need is 16.1. So a small gap there, nothing of any magnitude, and we'll talk briefly about how we get there. We looked at two alternatives. Both of these would add 2 million gallons per day each, so a total of 4. One is connecting, actually the pipes are already connected, but entering into a permanent relationship with the city of Salisbury to buy water from them. And then the other alternative is to expand your relationship, yours and Concord's relationship with the city of Albemarle, to basically double that current contract amount. So sometimes graphically it's easier to see here, so we thought this was a helpful chart. The blue line represents the expected peak day demand of your growth of your system over a 35-year period. The dark solid red line is your current supply of 15.6. And then we broke that. The dotted line is 90% of that. The dashed line is 90% of that. The dotted line is 80%. So you kind of get a feel for this is not a concern next year or the year after, right? This is a little bit far out before this becomes a very real and practical operational issue. You just recognize these water supply projects, they can take 5 to 8 years to implement, so planning is important. And you see the green line shows how your supply would change if you added 2 million a day from Salisbury and then added 2 million from Albemarle, and how that gets you to where you need to be within the planning horizon. The next project type, we looked at how is your water system prepared to provide for the type of land use that your 2030 plan predicts or promotes. So it's exercise on our side of looking at your current system compared to the type of coverage or the type of service in certain areas and identifying any gaps. Our team and your team, we have a hydraulic model, a computer model of your water system, so we evaluate that and just look at where the deficiencies are, and then we interface with your team on alternatives and what we think is the best way to get the level of service you need. And this is where we come up with but alternatives like, do we need new elevated storage? In what locations? Are the pipelines big enough? Do you not have pipelines in some areas where the 2030 plan recommends water service? That was part of it. And then are your pump stations large enough to convey the water that would be expected in those service zones. The third kind of bucket of project types would be major rehabilitation projects. Again, these are not things like painting a water tank or replacing an electrical panel. These are significant multi-million-dollar projects, but we call them rehabilitation because they really don't have a capacity component to it. These are mostly, frankly, at your water treatment plant, and things that you know that are upcoming that will need to be addressed. I think there were 5 or 6 capital projects in our list at the water plant itself. The fourth bullet there, replace 2-inch water lines. That's an interesting one. You do have a significant amount of 2-inch pipe in your system that doesn't meet the regulatory standards, and you're not alone in this. There are communities all across the state, and these water lines were installed decades, perhaps even over a century ago. So over some time frame, there's a recommendation and an investment to upgrade those pipes to meet current levels of service. And then there is a water meter replacement. Several of your water meters have far exceeded their useful life, and so an investment in that is included. The last bucket of projects that we looked at is serving these new neighborhoods. Again, these are roads and neighborhoods that are generally, if you were to draw one big circle around your service area, these would generally be inside that circle. Some of these are in the city limits, some aren't. But so there has been interest in extending water service there, so we had a list of several projects. I think there were 7 of them or 6 of them that had expressed interest, and I think staff and council has expressed interest in. So those were on our list of capital projects also. I believe that is it for me. Yes, so I'll turn it back over to Alex, and if there are any questions, we're happy to answer. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, as Adam said, if you have any questions on water, we'd be happy to take them now. And if not, we'll turn it over to Brian to start the financial portion of the presentation.
Mr. Jackson.
I have one question, Alex. On the Albemarle water line, is that a physical upgrade to upgrade the capacity?
Yes, sir. So the plan would be to expand their water plant. So the pipeline that we built several years ago is sized appropriately, as well as the ground level storage tank. And there may be some minor pump improvements at the joint pump station, but the vast majority of the dollars that would be involved in expanding that amount of water capacity would go directly to Albemarle's Tuckertown facility, just because we need to expand it $5 million, or we could go up to $5 million. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Jackson, I'd add too, per our existing agreement, once we reached 50% of the demand on that line, then we were required to start this next phase and stage of improvements, and that's where we are right now. Is that we're currently utilizing half that initial capacity. If you remember, we had 10 million gallons of water that we were able to pull from that location through that line. Well, we're at that 50% of that capacity now, so we need to begin the planning and expansion phases in accordance with our agreement with them.
Would that be a joint effort with Concord?
Yes, sir, it would be.
Yeah, Mr. Anderson, I do have a question just about serving the new neighborhoods. I'm just trying to remember from our retreat. My understanding is if we did extend lines out there, they would not be forced to connect to city water. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. So the staff's intent, or kind of our goal, if you will, if there's any desire for council to consider extending into those neighborhoods, would be actually go talk to the neighborhoods, have community meetings, maybe here at City Hall, but also have them locally. And if there is a majority that want the water service, then we would explore that. If the majority do not desire it, we wouldn't want to extend it and try to move into some sort of forced connection situation.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Dixon?
Alex, I just want to thank you and the presenters for this remarkable information. I serve on the WASAC board, and it has been just a tremendous learning curve for me. And so having these presentations regarding the financial aspect, the flow, and the FICE and the MGDs has really opened my eyes as to how we need to vote and consider the information that's coming to us. So thank you very, very, very much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Mr. Roberts.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to take this time to introduce Mitch Bergoglio with Davenport and Company. Just for a little bit of background, Davenport has been our financial advisor for several years. Mitch in particular has been a part of several of our debt issuances going back probably about 15 years or so. And this evening, Mitch's presentation will discuss the background and options available for the Water and Sewer Fund. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mitch.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Thank you for having us this evening. So you all just heard a lot about the potential needs, capacity and capital needs of the water and sewer system. And you're going to hear a little bit more about the financial planning associated with potentially addressing some of those needs. Thought it would be helpful from a financial perspective to give you a sense of some of your options to finance these projects, and in particular, understanding that there may be a need to borrow some funds to address these capital needs, give you some perspective on what goes into borrowing or financing water and sewer projects, and what are some of the key things that lenders and others will take into consideration when deciding whether or not they will lend those funds to you to fund these projects. So that's kind of the basis of my presentation, and hopefully it'll give you a little bit of perspective for what you're going to hear from others this evening. So starting out, page 1 of my presentation, very high level on the credit ratings of water and sewer utility systems. And think about it this way, in our personal lives, if we want to buy a house or we want to buy a car, we may need to go get a loan to do that. And when we go to do that, the bank is going to pull our credit score to determine whether we are credit worthy to lend money to, and at what interest rates they would be willing to lend us that money. A credit rating for a municipal government like yourselves is very similar, right? They're going to look at the city's finances, operations, and assign a score to the city that is a measure of their willingness to lend to the city relative to other cities and towns nationwide. The city's general fund or general obligation issuer level rating is a AA2 AA. From Moody's and Standard & Poor's. These are two of the most frequently used national rating agencies. That's a very good rating. You can see in the chart on the left, the gold is the city's issuer rating. That is 2 steps away from the highest rating of a AAA. So general fund is in very good shape in terms of accessing the markets if you choose to do so. In the light blue box is where the city's water and sewer revenue bonds were previously rated. The city does not have any publicly outstanding water and sewer revenue bonds. Right now, all of your water and sewer debt is with a bank loan or is through a state revolving loan. So you do not have or need a bond rating for the water and sewer revenue bonds at this point. This is not an outstanding rating. However, the most recent ratings you had were from 2023, and those are highlighted in blue, the A1, A+. So that is, if you're looking at that chart on the left, 2 steps below where the city's general fund or issuer rating is currently rated. Okay, so just a little bit of perspective starting out. The next page, page 2, kind of shows you how Moody's Investor Service in particular rates cities nationwide and in North Carolina. And I shouldn't say cities, I should say water and sewer systems, because not all these water and sewer systems are cities. Some are county water and sewer systems, some are standalone water and sewer systems like Water and Sewer Authority of Cabarrus County. So these are more broadly water and sewer systems. And you can see the distribution of these ratings on the left. Again, you all were most recently rated in that single A category. So looking at single A or higher, nationally, about a third of all water and sewer systems are in that single A category. About 2/3 are higher rated. And on the right, you get a sense of all of the rated North Carolina water and sewer systems. And at that single A rating, you would have been on the lower end of the rated water and sewer systems in North Carolina. The bulk are rated in the double A category. But that's, you can see there's only 26 listed there for Moody's. There's a lot of water and sewer systems like yourselves now that don't have publicly rated debt, don't have bond ratings outstanding. So this is just a picture of those that are currently rated. What goes into that rating, right? I think this is the important part to think about as you go forward for planning purposes. What are the key credit factors that these rating agencies or lenders will be looking at when they think about their willingness to lend funds to fund capital projects to your water and sewer utility? The left-hand side outlines Moody's Investor Service rating methodology. These are the key things that they look at when they first evaluate your rating. And I'll talk off of the green highlights. The first is system characteristics. This makes up 30% of the overall rating. So I'm on the top left here of page 3. System characteristics represents 30% of the overall rating. These are not things that you all as a council have direct control over as part of the current budget process, right? These are broader metrics. The condition of your overall system, wealth indicators of the service area, the overall size of your water and sewer utility. Certainly there are things planning-wise, economic development-wise that you can do to try to grow the size of the system, increase salaries around the city, but there's not one thing you can do to immediately change these metrics. So you can kind of see there the check boxes are more of a longer-term control, or I'd say longer-term influence that you can have on these, but nothing directly immediately. The remainder of these items you do have a little more control over. Financial strength. So this is measured by the liquidity, your cash reserves of the utility system, your debt service coverage. So essentially what this means, and we'll go into this in a little more shortly, but essentially you collect revenues from the water and sewer system, you pay your operating expenses, and what's left over is available for debt service. And what you have available left over for debt service is your principal and interest payments on your water and sewer debt. How many times can you pay that debt service from what's left over after paying expenses? This is a really important metric, and you're going to hear more about that later this evening. Those are kind of the key things financial strength-wise, and you all do have control over that as part of the budget. It's part of setting your rates and charges. Managing your expenses, deciding what capital you fund. All of those things influence this financial strength category, and that is 40% of the overall rating. Excuse me. Management is 20% of your overall rating. So rate management, that's willingness and ability to raise rates and set rates and charges where they need to be in order to meet these financial strength metrics. And regulatory compliance and capital management. Are you addressing the capital needs of the system? Are you keeping it well-maintained, addressing capacity, addressing regulatory requirements? In recent years, I'm not the expert here, these guys are, but there's been a lot of regulations come out from the federal government on water and sewer utilities that increase capital requirements significantly. Are you staying on top of those? Are you funding them? Or are you deferring them such that you have a major expense coming up that isn't reflected in your current financial strength? So that's another 20% of the overall rating. And then the final 10% is a little more on the legal nature of things, when you issue water and sewer revenue bonds, you are contracting with the lenders to maintain certain things associated with the water and sewer system. And this 10% is tied to the levels which you set in those contracts to borrow money. So really, the focus is on financial strength and management as the 60% of the rating that you have direct, immediate control over. Okay, feel free to stop me along the way if you have questions. I'm gonna keep rolling because I know you got some more coming. Page 4 is just a look at your current water and sewer debt profile. So the graphic in the top left is a look at your principal payments in the dark blue and your interest payments in the light blue. When you borrow money, you have to pay that money back plus an interest rate, plus an interest expense. And overall, you can see it starts with current fiscal year 2026 on the far left, and you can see for the next 2 years, there's a little bit of an increase in those payments. That's as the debt payments on the spillway, the most recent financing, come online. You have to manage your debt payments as they start to pay back. It peaks in fiscal year 28, and then it generally stays roughly flat there for the foreseeable future. So next couple years, you do have a slight step up in your debt payments that will need to be addressed. Overall, $60.6 million of debt outstanding. All of that's paid back within the next 20 years, 2046. Okay. Page 5, I mentioned the legal requirements associated with borrowing for water and sewer credits. And I think this is really important for you all to be aware of. I know it's a little bit in the weeds, but I'll go quickly, just bear with me here. The city historically has chosen to fund its water and sewer capital needs through a water and sewer revenue bond. Unlike how we financed this building that we're in, that was an installment financing, which means it was a mortgage on this facility. So you all have to appropriate payments. You have to budget for payments on this facility every year. If you do not budget for the payment and you do not make the payment, the bondholders can come and foreclose on this building. Just like we take out a mortgage on our homes or a car loan on our cars, if we don't pay, the bank takes it. Same premise with this building. With the water and sewer system, it's a little different. It is a pledge of the net revenues generated by the water and sewer system. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but it all comes down to the fact that your ability to generate revenue from the water and sewer utility stems from your ability to provide those services. If you're not sending water to people's homes, you can't bill them. If you're not collecting and treating wastewater, you can't bill them. So when we finance a utility capital improvement, what we're pledging is the net revenue of the system, what I referenced earlier. The revenues that come in minus the expenses that you pay is the net revenue available. And the reason why lenders and bond investors prefer or like that structure is because it really ties the payment of their revenue bonds to the operation of your water and sewer system. Your revenues are generated from the expenses that you incur delivering the water, collecting the wastewater. So what you are pledging to the bondholders, and this is a contractual agreement that you have entered into, you are contractually obligated to do this, is you will maintain rates and charges at a level that will generate 1.2 times debt service coverage on your revenue bonds and 1.0 times coverage on all indebtedness. I'm going to break it down in very simple numbers. If you've got $4 of net revenue and $2 of expenses, you have $2 of net revenue available to pay debt service. $4 of revenue minus $2 of expenses equals $2 of net revenue available to pay debt service. If I have $1 of debt service to pay, those $2 can pay for that 2 times. That is 2 times debt service coverage. I can pay my debt twice from those net revenues. Contractually, you are required to generate 1.2 times your revenue bond debt service. And you have some state revolving loans that are not revenue bonds per se. They're not on the same level. They are considered other indebtedness. So you only have to meet those 1 times. For every $1 of debt service, you have to have $1 of net revenue. Those are your minimum contractual requirements. Another important piece of this is that to protect bondholders, you have agreed that you will not issue any future debt unless you can demonstrate that you will meet these minimum requirements after that debt has been issued. So bringing it back to the capital improvements that you just walked through, if you want to issue debt to fund any of these capital improvements, you have to be able to demonstrate that your rates and charges are sufficient to contractually meet those minimum debt service coverage levels. Okay? I'm going to keep rolling. If you have questions, let me know. In addition to those minimum financial contractual requirements, the market, investors, lenders are generally going to want to see you holding yourself to a higher standard than that. If you're at the absolute contractual minimum, there's not a lot of room for any hiccups, right? So they like to see higher levels. Your financial policies kind of mirror those contractual requirements. They really set the minimum at which you can operate the system. So your debt service coverage policies follow those contractual requirements. And they also establish a minimum liquidity or reserves in the utility system equal to 25% of operating expenses. So if revenue stops, you can't deliver water, you can't treat wastewater, the minimum of 25% of operating expenses means you could operate your system for an additional quarter before you rolled through all of your reserves. That is establishing an absolute minimum. From a planning perspective, like I said, lenders are going to want to see you hold yourself to a higher standard. What you're going to see here in a little bit in the financial projections is a minimum target of 1.5 times debt service coverage. So for every $1 of principal and interest you have to pay, you need to have $1.50 of net revenues and at least 50% or a half of a year of utility operations in cash reserves. Those are kind of the planning targets that you all are working towards. Okay? How is that stacked up historically? Well, we took a look at the last 5 years of your audited financial statements and the resulting history of these 2 key ratios, debt service coverage and cash liquidity. We've done the debt service coverage calculations for you. Revenues on line 1, expenditures on line 3, give us net revenue available for debt service on line 5. So in fiscal year 25, $27.4 million of revenues, $20.7 million of expenses, left you with $6.6 million of net revenues available to pay debt service. You had $5.6 million of revenue bond debt service, $130,000 of revolving loan payments for a total of $5.7 million of total principal plus interest payments. So the resulting debt service coverage, let's just look at total debt service coverage on line 12, was 1.2 times. That's $6.6 million of net revenue compared to the $5.7 million of debt service gave you 1.2 times coverage. Getting pretty tight, right, to those contractual minimums. You can see going back to 22, you were as high as 2.3 times, and that's come down over the last few years, which is not uncommon as we've seen extreme inflation, particularly in water and sewer utilities. Operating expenses have increased, and that's really brought down the margin of revenues versus expenses. And so now we're kind of at a point where we really don't have a lot of room to meet those contractual requirements. If we're going to be looking at issuing debt in the future, we're going to need to have a little more room under that debt service coverage in order to bring the new debt service online, right? We're already at 1.2 times. There's not a whole lot more debt service that we can handle before we're out of our contractual requirements. Well, you talk about this all the time, Mitch, but what happens if we're out of those contractual requirements? Well, a third-party trustee on behalf of the bondholders can ask you to bring in a third-party rate consultant and implement the recommendations required in order to bring those back up into compliance. So really, it's either you all determine what's needed or somebody else comes in and determines what's needed in order to meet those bond requirements. From a cash and liquidity perspective, you can see your cash, unrestricted cash on line 15. It's been as high as over $14.8 million in the past. Ended last fiscal year at just at $10 million of cash and liquidity. That represents about just under 50% of the annual operating budget of the utility system, right? So you're kind of right at that planning target of 50%. But that doesn't leave us with any cash to really invest in capital projects, right? So that means we either A, need to borrow to fund capital if there's any capital that you want to fund, and therefore that impacts our debt service coverage, so we got to have more net revenue, or we got to come up with more revenue and net revenue to be able to cash fund capital projects, right? So I think the point is we've kind of maxed out our affordability under the current revenue structure. And as we consider more capital in the future, we're going to have to look at increasing the gap between revenues and expenses. Okay? We do have for you just graphically on page 8, the debt service coverage ratio that we talked about. That's on the left. I think we've covered that pretty well. We do compare that for you to your minimum policy and your planning levels. You can see we're still above the red line minimum policy, but we are below that 1.5 times planning level. And then for perspective on the right, I think this is really kind of the key point of this slide is, you can see at your current levels compared to those nationally rated water and sewer systems, national are in dark green, and then North Carolina only are in the light green, the medians of all those people that are rated, right? So this is the median, half are higher, half are lower, but you can see how you stack up, and you're really kind of right in line with that North Carolina single A median, but below all the others, right? And this just kind of reinforces what we saw on the prior page, that we don't have a lot of room to take on new requirements under our current financial structure. The minimum of the single A is a 1.2, which is right where you're at. The minimum for any double A rated North Carolina system is a 1.6 times. So even if we hit that target level of 1.5, we're still below the lowest double A in North Carolina. But I think 1.5 times is a good planning level to target. Similarly on liquidity, right? Cash as a percent of operating expenses. As we saw, we have been declining there, but we're right on top of that 50% planning target currently. And even at that 50% target, you can see that does put us below all of the medians. These medians are done in days cash on hand. It's the same calculation. 100% of operating revenue is 365 days cash on hand. So 50% is 180 days cash on hand. You can see the lowest North Carolina double A in the bullets down below is about 62 days. So we are above the minimum there on the cash perspective. But the median is like 740 days, give or take. So well below that at roughly 180 days cash on hand. So again, thought this would be helpful perspective for y'all as we think about funding capital. We may need to enter the capital markets to borrow money for the water and sewer system. These are some of the key things that lenders are going to be looking at, that rating agencies will look at, and will really drive our ability to, number one, access the markets for the money to fund capital, and number two, influence the interest rate at which we can get, which ultimately drives what our annual payment is, right? So the higher the interest rate, the higher our annual payment, the more net revenue and revenue we have to generate to be able to issue those revenue bonds. So ultimately, planning for the 50% cash, the 1.5 times debt service coverage, I think is really where we need to be to make sure we have access to the capital markets at reasonable levels of interest. Happy to answer any questions y'all have. I know that was a lot. I'm always available for follow-ups, but hopefully that sets you up for what you're going to hear next.
Our credit rating.
Yes, sir.
So that's basically based on our revenue, size of our revenue?
So it's based on a couple things, right? It's based upon things you can control and can't control, right? It's the things you don't have immediate control over are your system size, customers, expense size, revenue size. It's based upon the demographics of your service area, population, salary, per capita personal income levels, and it's based upon the condition of your system. Right, so that's kind of the things you don't have control over. And then to your point, yes, the revenue size compared to your expenses, the reserves that you have, cash that you have on hand, those are the other key metrics. Those financial metrics represent 40% of the overall rating.
So the lenders seem to be really covered.
Yes, sir. I mean, from a lender's perspective, right, the revenue is really important. But if your expenses are equal to your revenue, that doesn't leave them any room to actually receive their bond payment, right? So what they really care about is that net revenue, what's left after you pay expenses.
Right, like 2.5 times.
Yes, sir. You got it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Barry, you have anything? Yes. Okay. All right.
Thank you all.
Sir. That's a lot of information. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
Well, we got one more presentation, Brian, you're going to bring up. Now, you've heard about all the needs that we have, the desire, based upon our land use plan, how our lenders look at us and how we're gauged against our peers in the industry. And now we're going to provide you, if you want to go down and you want to do the projects, how do you pay for them?
No.
Thank you, Mitch.
So at this time, I'd like to introduce Michael Cronin with Wildan Financial Services. Michael has worked with our team over this past about 18-month period to develop the rate study model we'll be getting ready to present, and ultimately be able to show you what some bill impacts are, along with, as Wilmer addressed, the necessary rate adjustments if you elect to do certain projects.
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, Mayor Wilson and members of the council. My name is Michael Cronin. I'm a senior financial advisor, where I'm a senior project manager with Wildan Financial Services, and today we'll be discussing, like you've heard previously from LKC, Garver, and Davenport, some CIP priorities and how that impacts actual rates and bills. So we'll start with some rate study goals and objectives. So we want to evaluate the financial health and stability of the water and sewer utilities, which we did through developing a 10-year financial plan for both the water, sewer, and combined utility system. We want to provide funding for our current and future operating and maintenance expenses, as well as our capital projects and our water and sewer master plans that have been identified. We want to maintain those adequate cash reserves that was mentioned by Davenport, as well as meeting our annual debt obligation requirements. All right, so now we'll discuss the financial plan drivers and considerations. So as we know, just like anything in life, right, we have rising operating costs. So we have rising costs of equipment, supplies, power, chemicals, water purchases, water treatment, etc. We're currently assuming those costs are going to grow at about 7% annually. We also have some periodic increase in WASAC operating costs from wastewater treatment plant expansions. We're currently assuming a wastewater treatment plant expansion completed in fiscal year 2027 that will result in additional operating costs of $600,000 in 2027 to the sewer utility system. And we're anticipating another expansion being completed in fiscal year 2031 for the WASAC expansion that would result in about another $1.98 million in annual operating costs to the sewer utility system. We also need to make sure that we're meeting our existing and future annual debt service payment requirements. And we also need to make sure that we're meeting our debt and cash reserve policy objectives that you just heard from Davenport, such as the 180 days cash on hand, as well as maintain that 1.5 minimum debt service coverage requirement. We want to make sure that we're funding our ongoing critical obligatory and R&R capital projects identified in those master plans that we saw from LKC and Garver. And we also want to consider funding short and long-term expansion capital projects identified in the recently conducted water and sewer master plans. All right, so what we're going to look at here. So we're going to look at some status quo projections and the financial metrics under our status quo scenario, which essentially means we operate the utility system as it is today under our existing rate structure. So you're going to see a similar trend that was mentioned by Davenport. So if we look at the graphic up top, which is representative of our revenues over our expenditures, excluding any capital cost, as we can see, our dark blue bars here represent our revenues, our light blue bars represent our expenditures, and that black line you see represents our net operating results. And as you can see, that's below zero every single year. So if we don't increase our rates, we won't generate enough revenue to cover our operating expenditures. If we move down to the bottom left graphic, which represents our total days cash on hand or our total cash reserves, that blue bar that you see represents our total cash balance. The black line that you see there represents our targeted days of O&M, which is currently set at 180 days of cash on hand. And as you can see, through 2031, we currently do not meet our targeted days cash on hand. And actually by 2029 fiscal year, we're projecting running out of money and actually running a negative cash balance through 2031. If we move to the bottom right graphic, which is our debt service coverage ratio, the blue bar represents our actual coverage ratio calculation. And once again, as you can see, that falls below that black line, which is our minimum debt service coverage ratio target of 1.2 times, and also below our coverage target of 1.5 times. So what we could see from this graphic is that doing nothing is not an option, because if we do nothing, we're not going to meet our financial goals, such as generating enough revenue to cover our operating expenditures. We're not going to meet our days cash on hand targets, and we're also not going to meet our reserve or our debt requirements that we need to have for our bond holders currently. All right, so now we'll talk about some methodology and projections. So this slide we're looking at here is our general rate study methodology. I'm actually going to speak to this slide backwards and start at the bottom and work our way to the top, because that's typically how we conduct a rate study analysis. So first we'll look at the green bubbles there that you see, which represent our total revenue requirements. Those are made up of our O&M expenditures, our annual debt service payment, as well as our debt service coverage requirement, our capital expenditures, and then our cash reserve policy and objectives. So once we define our total revenue requirements, we then back out other revenue sources, which are made up of things such as connection and tap fees, miscellaneous revenues, interest earnings on investments, etc. So once we back out our other revenues from our total revenue requirements, we know how much of those revenue requirements need to be generated from our actual user rate revenues. So we determine our user rate revenues by applying your customer units and the associated usage and volumes to the actual existing rates to determine how much user rate revenues we're getting from our existing rates. And then we compare that to the remaining revenue requirements that we need to recover from our user rates, which leads us to that gray bubble off to the right that you see there, where when we have revenue shortfalls, we engage in what we call revenue adjustments or rate adjustments to make sure that we're meeting and satisfying our total revenue requirements. So now we're going to look at the CIP by funding source. So this is essentially a summary of the funding source of the CIP. So we'll start with the water system. So through 2036, these numbers are represented in thousands, by the way. So as you can see, our total water CIP is about $205.5 million through 2036. Of that, we're assuming about 171 million will be funded through some kind of debt issuance, and that the remainder will be funded from PAYGO, which essentially means it'll be funded from user dollars or cash reserves. We'll now look at the sewer system through 2036. We're looking at a total capital expenditure cost of about $70 million. Once again, 50 million of that we're anticipating will be funded through some kind of bond or debt issuance, and the remainder, about $19 million, will be funded from cash or cash reserves. So that leads to a total capital expenditure cost of $275 million. So that's a lot of money that we got to come up with over the next 10 years or so. And of that, since 3/4 of that we're assuming is to be funded through debt, that's why it's very important that we meet the financial metrics that Davenport had referenced previously to make sure that we have the capability to take on new debt, as well as look favorably to the financial markets as well as the rating agencies. So this slide just calls out some of our major critical infrastructure projects, such as the water treatment plant rehab. So there's 3 phases for that currently that we have in here. So we have our PFAS removal, which is our forever chemicals. We're anticipating that project taking place in fiscal year 2029 for an approximate cost of $16 million. We're anticipating a water treatment plant rehab phase 2 project, part A, in fiscal year 2029 as well, of about $1.6 million. And then we're anticipating another phase 2 rehab project for the water treatment plant for parts B and C, which are anticipating will take place in fiscal year 2032 as well as in 2035 for another $12.7 million. The last 2 bullets you see there are related to the sewer system. So we have our Kannapolis Wastewater Treatment Plant project anticipated to take place in fiscal year 2028 of about $29 million. And then we also have our SRU Kannapolis Crossing Lift Station Improvement Project anticipated to take place in fiscal year 2028 for about $6 million. And the reason we wanted to call out these specific critical infrastructure projects is because they make about 50% of the total water and sewer CIP through 2031, and they make up about 1/4 of the CIP through 2036. So these projects alone have a significant impact on our capital plan. So now we're going to look at the 10-year financial plan overview. So we'll look at our 10-year projected customer count and customer growth assumptions. We'll look at our 10-year inside city water and sewer monthly bill and rate impact under various capital funding scenarios for a typical residential customer using 4,000 gallons of monthly usage. And we actually determine that by looking at your historical billing data to determine that average use per customer. We'll then look at the 10-year projected financial metric results, such as the debt service coverage ratio and the days cash on hand that you heard mentioned previously by Davenport. We'll then look at a synopsis of this and a comparison slide, so that way we can see how all the bills are impacted under each capital scenario. And then finally, we'll look at how the existing and the fiscal year 2027 projected bills are compared to our neighboring utilities in the area. So first, like I said, we'll start with the projected water and sewer customer accounts. The blue bars represent our water customer accounts, and the green bars represent our sewer customer accounts. And currently, our water customer accounts are estimated at about 22,675 accounts. We're anticipating by 2036 that will increase by about 5,000 customers to about 27,600 customers. For our sewer customer accounts, we're currently looking at about 20,979 accounts, and we're anticipating that will increase by about 4.5 thousand accounts to about 25,000 account or 26,000 accounts, somewhere in that range. All right, so we're going to look at our operating and maintenance costs only scenario. So this means we're just keeping the lights on. We're not funding any of the capital projects that you heard beforehand. This is what we need just to make sure we can keep operating the utility system as it stands today. So one thing I do want to point out here before I get into the rates themselves, we look at the monthly base charge as well as the volumetric charge per 1,000 gallons of water, is that both fees are increasing. And the reason that is for one, we want to increase the base fee because we want to promote revenue stability of the system, since a majority of a utility's costs are inherently fixed. But we also want to increase the volumetric rate to allow the users to have some control over their bill through their monthly water usage. So we want to make sure we have that good balancing act to provide revenue stability, as well as, like I said, giving revenue or giving customers some control over their bill through their monthly water usage and promoting conservation. So with that said, the monthly base charge under our operating and maintenance cost only scenario is currently $8.30. We're anticipating that going to $9 even in 2027, and then by 2036, we're anticipating that monthly base charge being $14 per month. We'll now look at the volumetric charge. The city currently has what we call an inclining block rate structure, which means that as you go through different tier thresholds of usage, you pay more per unit of water. So currently, the tier 1 threshold is 0 to 7,000 gallons of water for an inside city residential customer. So they currently pay $7.31 per 1,000 gallons of usage. In 2027, that'll go to $7.60 per 1,000 gallons of usage. And by 2036, that will go to $10.82 per 1,000 gallons of water usage. For the tier 2 threshold, anything over 7,000 gallons of usage, that rate is currently $7.60 per 1,000 gallons. It'll go up to $7.90 per 1,000 gallons in 2027, and then by 2036, we're anticipating that rate will go up to $11.25. So that would bring a water bill for a customer using 4,000 gallons of water per month. Currently, the bill would be $37.54. In 2027, that bill would go to $39.40. And by 2036, that bill will go up to $57.28 for a water bill. So now if we look at the sewer system, you'll see that similar trend of both the base fee and the volumetric rate going up. So the monthly base charge will go from $7.20 on the sewer system up to $12 in 2027. And then by 2036, that rate would be $21.69. The volumetric charge is currently $7.45. In 2027, it would go to $8.23 per 1,000 gallons of usage. And then by 2036, that rate would be $12.77 per 1,000 gallons of usage. So the total monthly sewer bill for a customer using 4,000 gallons a month is currently $37 per month. Next year would go to $44.92 per month, and by 2036, that bill would go to $72.77 per month. So currently, if you're a customer using both water and sewer service, your existing bill would be $74.54. In 2027, that bill would go to $84.32, and by 2036, that bill would go to $130.85 for a user with combined water and sewer service. So if we look at the monthly bill adjustment, in 2027, that bill will go up by $9.78 in 2027, which is an increase of about 13%. And also you'll notice the same trend in this slide as well as the subsequent capital slides, is that the revenue adjustments are more front-end loaded, and that's one because of the COVID era, as we know, and this was across the country, this isn't unique to the city of Kannapolis, but there was an effort to mitigate cost on residents because we were in an area of high inflation, and we also wanted to defer rate adjustments and keep them arbitrarily low, so that way we didn't have to put that extra cost burden on the customers who already were experiencing that inflation. So we're kind of in this post-COVID era catch-up, you could say, based off us keeping rates low during that period of COVID. So scenario 1 is our critical projects that we're going to look to fund, plus our operating and maintenance costs that we just saw on the previous slide. So similar trend, our monthly base charge is currently $8.30 for water. It'll go up to $9.50 under this scenario, and by 2036, it would go up to $16.81. The volumetric charges, once again, are $7.31 and $7.60 respectively. In 2027, they would go up to $7.71 and then $8.02 respectively. And by 2036, Tier 1 rate would be $11.90 per 1,000 gallons and then $12.37 per 1,000 gallons for Tier 2 usage. So that water bill, once again, is $37.54 currently. It would go up to $40.34 in 2027, and by 2036, that bill would be $64.41. For the sewer system, once again, the base charge currently is $7.20. That bill would go up to $12 for the monthly base charge, and then by 2036, that rate would go to $30.48 for that monthly fixed fee, or that monthly base charge. For the volumetric charge, once again, that rate is currently $7.45. That will go up to $8.29 per 1,000 gallons in 2027. And by 2036, that rate will go up to $16.12 per 1,000 gallons of usage. So that current bill of $37 will go up to $45.16 in 2027. and then up to $94, almost $95 by 2036. So our combined water and sewer bill would, which is currently $74.54, will go up to $85.50 in 2027, and then go up to about $159 by fiscal year 2036. And once again, you'll see that same front-end loading taking place. Oh, apologies, I don't know what button I just hit. All right, so now we'll go on to our scenario 2. So this is going to include all of our priority 1 projects, those critical projects, and it's going to include our renewal and replacement projects as well, which we're considering our priority 2 projects. So once again, that $8.30 charge for the monthly base charge for water would go up to $10 even, and then it would go up to $19.54 by 2036. The Tier 1 and Tier 2 rates for water would go up from $7.31 to $7.97, and from $7.60 to $8.29. And then by 2036, those rates would be $13.53 and $14.07 respectively per 1,000 gallons of water usage as we move to those tier thresholds. So the water monthly bill that's now currently $37.54 will go to $41.88, and by 2036 it will be $73.66. For our sewer system, once again, that $7.20 charge for the base fee will go up to $12. By 2036, it'll go up to $31.32. And that volume charge, as currently $7.45 per 1,000 gallons of usage, will go up to $8.53 per 1,000 gallons, and then up to $17.68 per 1,000 gallons. So once again, that $37 existing charge for sewer customers will go up to $46.12 next year, and then by 2036, that bill will go to about $102 for just that sewer bill. And as you can see, this is mainly driven, like we talked about, by those WASAC costs and things of that nature. So that will be something we'll get to in the preceding slides, is some of those projects and the actual bill impact that they have, just so you could see and highlight how individual specific projects are actually impacting, especially the sewer side. So once again, that combined bill at 4,000 gallons per month is currently $74.54. That'll go up to $88 even in 2027. And then by 2036, that bill would be right around $176 for a combined water and sewer bill for a customer that's an inside city customer using 4,000 gallons of usage per month. All right, so now we'll move on to our scenario 3. So this is going to include all of our critical projects, our priority 1 projects, all of our R&R priority 2 projects, as well as our short-term expansion capital projects, which we're going to call our priority 3 projects. So once again, that existing base charge for water will go up to $10, and by 2036, it'll go up to $19.77. And then the volume charge will go up to $8.04 in 2027 for that Tier 1 rate, and then for the Tier 2 rate, it'll go up to $8.36. And by 2036, we're looking at a Tier 1 rate of $14.31 per 1,000 gallons, and the Tier 2 rate would be $14.88 per 1,000 gallons. So that water bill now, that's $37.54, will go up to $42.16 in 2027, and then up to $77 by 2036. For the sewer system, that $7.20 base charge is still going to go up to $12 in that preceding year. And then by 2036, it'll go up to $31.63. The volumetric charge per 1,000 gallons of $7.45 will go up to $8.57 in 2027, and then up to $18.24 per 1,000 gallons by 2036. So that's $37 sewer bill. Once again, will go up to $46.28, and then it'll go up to about $104.60 by 2036. So once again, that year 1 increase to 2027, we're looking at about a $14 increase to get us to a monthly water and sewer combined bill of $88.44. All right, so now we're going to go to our scenario 4 scenario. So this is going to include all of our capital projects. So this is our priority 1 critical projects, our R&R, priority 2 projects, our short-term and long-term expansion capital projects. So this is everything in the kitchen sink. So for our base charge, once again, that $8.30 charge is still going up to $10. You're not really going to see the impact here until the later years, especially because the long-term capital expansion projects, we're not assuming those take place until the early mid-2030 range. So we're still quite a ways away from that. So the 2036 rate for the base charge will go up to $20.24 for the water system. The volumetric charge for Tier 1 will go up to $14.65, and the Tier 2 rate will go up to $15.23 by 2036. So we'll still have the same bill of $42.16 for the water system in 2027, and that bill will go up to $78.84 by fiscal year 2036. For the sewer system, we still have that $7.20 base charge that jumps to $12, and by 2036, that bill would go up to $32.41 just for the base fee. And then for the volumetric rate, that $7.45 charge per 1,000 gallons would go up to $8.57 per 1,000 gallons. And then by 2036, that rate would go up to $18.71. So that sewer bill, once again, will go up from $37 to $46.28 by 2027 fiscal year. And by fiscal year 2036, that sewer bill will go up to $107. So once again, our current existing water and sewer bill for a residential customer that's inside city receiving 4,000 gallons per month is $74.54. That'll go up to that $88.44 again. And in 2036, that bill will now be $186. So now we're going to look at our key financial metrics under each scenario. So this boils down to what you just heard discussed by Davenport of maintaining a debt service coverage ratio target of 1.5 times. So as you can see, there's some highlighted yellow cells on the table. Those are areas where we're falling just short of our target of 1.5 times. So as you can see, we're meeting that debt service coverage ratio target in a majority of the years for a majority of our scenarios. Scenario 1 does fall a little shy of that 1.5 times, but we're still in the ballpark. But to make up for that, if we now transition to the bottom section of this table, we have our combined water and sewer utilities days cash on hand. So once again, we want to maintain 180 days of cash on hand, just like we do in our personal savings account, where we maintain at least 3 to 6 months of personal savings based off our monthly expenditures. So as we can see, currently, we fall short of that 180 days. In 2027, we still fall short, but we're progressing toward that 180-day target, so we're making a step in the right direction. And by 2028, for all scenarios other than our operating and maintenance cost scenario, we are meeting that 180-day cash requirement. We fall a little short in fiscal year 29 through 2031 for scenario 2, which is our critical and R&R project scenario. But in scenario 1, where we see our debt service coverage fall short, we do have stronger days cash on hand. So that's the good thing. So we can maybe use some of that cash to offset some of the debt service, so that way we're meeting both of those targets. And then once again, we stay true all the way through fiscal year 2036 and maintain at least that 180 days cash on hand. All right, so this slide is really just a synopsis of everything we saw before, just once again relaying what that combined bill at 4,000 gallons per month was for a water and sewer customer who is an inside city residential customer using 4,000 gallons per month of water usage. So now we're going to look at this utility comparison at 4,000 gallons a month, once again for an inside city residential customer receiving 4,000 gallons of service per month. The black line that you see going across the comparison utilities, that's actually the average. So the average water and sewer bill of the comparison group included herein is $73.32. The city of Kannapolis, as you see, falls right in the middle currently, right at the average, just slightly above at $74.54. Under our O&M scenario, we jump Statesville up to $84.32. And under our scenario 1, we stay in that same spot, but that bill increases by about another dollar up to $85.50. Under our scenario 2, which like I said includes our critical infrastructure projects, our renewal and replacement projects, that bill goes up to $88, and we also jump High Point and Thomasville at that point. And then for our scenario 3 and 4 projects, which include the long-term and short-term expansion capital projects, that bill goes up by another 44 cents. It gets to $88.44, and we stay right in that same realm. So we do get to the higher range of this comparison graphic under scenarios 2, 3, and 4. So now we're going to look at the capital project estimated bill impact based off specific capital projects and how they actually impact or will potentially impact an estimated bill for our current water and sewer customers. So we'll start with some water neighborhood expansion projects. So a lot of these projects fall in the priority 3, priority 4 range. Other than our Charlotte Water Interconnect, I think that's a priority 1 project from what I recall. As we can see, the total aggregate, if we look at the column all the way to the right at our additional monthly cost per account column, these total projects sum up to about $1.46 as an impact to the monthly bill on an existing customer. Then we have our Tucker Ave waterline project, which results in about another 38 cents increase to the monthly cost of a bill, which brings our total to about $2.47 when we include that 1.5 debt service coverage target that we want to meet. So these projects alone cause an additional monthly cost per account potential impact of $2.47 per month. We'll then move on to our water critical projects as well as some R&R projects and the estimated monthly bill impact they'll have. So the first 2 projects are our priority 2 projects. These are our renewal and replacement projects. So we have the 16-inch connection under railroad tracks downtown, which will increase the monthly bill by about 62 cents. We then have the Glen Ave Waterline project, which will increase the monthly bill by about $2.19. And then when we get to the next 3, these are our priority 1 projects. And the biggest impact is a water treatment plant rehab phase 1 PFAS removal project, which is also the forever chemicals that has been federally mandated. And unfortunately, there has, as of what we see now, been not any federal relief to help offset this capital cost. So unfortunately, it's on the burden of the city to meet this federal mandate and have to pay for this capital project, since there isn't currently any grant funding or anything else that we've been seeing to help offset this. And once again, this is not unique to the city. This unfortunately has been an impact to municipalities and utilities that we work with within the state of North Carolina as well as across the country. So we're seeing this universally, and the burden this is placing on utility systems to find a way to fund the PFAS removal projects. So as you can see, that project alone has an impact of about $4.83 to a monthly customer's bill. So then we have the water treatment plant rehab phase 2 project for part A, which increases the monthly bill by about 50 cents. And then we have our North Carolina DOT project, which adds about a cost per of additional 16 cents per month. So that comes to a total of about $8.28 per month increase to a water bill for a typical customer. And when we apply our 1.5 times debt service coverage ratio to that, we then end up with a monthly bill increase of about $12.43 to a water customer account. All right, so now we'll discuss some sewer capital projects and the estimated bill impact that they'll have. This is where we're really going to see bigger numbers, especially compared to the water side. So we're going to start with the SRU pump station. That additional cost per month per amount is going to be about $1.97. When we apply our 1.5 times debt service coverage ratio target to that, it results in an additional cost to the monthly bill of about $2.96. We have the WASAC 34 to 36 MGD treatment expansion. That's actually built into the sewer's annual operating expenses. That's why you don't see a debt service coverage ratio target applied to that, since that's factored into our actual operating cost. So that increase is just going to be $7.87 based off the existing number of accounts of 20,979 accounts. And then the biggest impact is going to be the Lannis Wastewater Treatment Plant project. So that is currently going to add an additional monthly cost estimated of about $9.48. So once we apply that 1.5 times debt service coverage ratio target to that, we're looking at about an increase of $14.22 per month. So these 3 projects alone total an increase of about $25 to a sewer monthly bill. All right, so with that said, does anybody have any questions? I'd expect some.
Michael, I think it's important that you mention on the Landis one that we've talked about, that assumes that we're paying all the costs and that we don't get any assistance with helping to fund that project.
That is correct. So currently, and I should elaborate on that this is worst case scenario. So we're assuming that all this burden is on the city to come up with this money and that we don't have any relief from grants or outside monies that may help offset these capital costs related to the city. And as we know, based off the land use plans, like you've heard discussed before, that will have a material impact on how these bills are impacted, because we may defer these projects and push them out so there wouldn't be a cost burden to the customers currently if we decide to adjust our land use plan depending on how aggressive we do or don't want to be with growth.
Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
Is
Yes,
this
sir.
the good news?
That is the good news, I guess you could say, Councilmember Jackson. This is the worst case scenario.
We don't want to hear your bad news, okay?
Yes, sir. This is worst case scenario. This is assuming, and the city is actively trying to find outside monies, alleviate these costs. Obviously, like I said, the land use plan will have a big impact on this and how aggressive we want to be toward growth. So all that will play into this worst case scenario that was presented that you saw tonight.
Well, I just hope we have some time to digest all of this and get together and have some really good talks on exactly what we need to do.
I agree.
Here, but we really need to look at this seriously. This is a lot of good information. I mean, it's almost like drinking from a fire hose, but.
Yes, sir, it's a lot of information.
Yeah.
So like even you heard from the other folks, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to let Mr. Melton know or any of the staff and have them reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to provide any follow-up that y'all may want or anything else that you may need to help. Because like you said, I know we're drinking from a fire hose tonight because that was a lot of information and that was a lot of capital priority scenarios that we had gone through tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ms. Hatchell?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all of our presenters tonight for giving us so much information, but making it very simple for us to understand. But more importantly, for the residents of Kannapolis, so they can go back, watch this, get this information. I'm sure this will be public so that our residents can also understand the different things that we're facing. So I really appreciate you guys breaking it down for us. So thank you to everyone, not just you, but everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Mayor, if I could add, so Brian and Kristen and I have worked really hard, as well as everybody on the team, Alex and everyone. And under scenario one, we've got that worked into the budget. I think Councilman Jackson, you mentioned that, you wanted time to digest. We certainly, no actions necessary tonight on anything. We wanted to get this before you heard it at the retreat. We've had some general conversations. We've emailed this information out, but I think now is where we'd like some feedback from you. Once you have an opportunity and you've reviewed the information in more detail, give us some sense of the scenarios that you would like us to kind of work from, and then we can come back and we'll work those numbers in. As you saw from each one of the presentations, scenario one we've got covered. We have to do it. Essentially, we need to meet those debt coverage ratios. We need to be able to pay for the additional costs for chemicals that we have to treat our water and the cost to treat sanitary sewer. But if you want to expand, if you want to add projects, those are the ones when you get into scenario 2, 3, and then 4. How aggressive you want to be with that, and we can come back to you with some recommendations. Perhaps it's a combination of those projects, but without question, I think what you're seeing from this, and you saw from each one of the presentations, the driver here today is sanitary sewer.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Last item on your agenda, and last one I have for you tonight too, Mayor. So last thing to discuss is utilities connections outside of city limits, and hopes that we could possibly set a more formal process for establishing voluntary process for acquiring city services. I'll spend just a few minutes or so on this map here. Just want to kind of orient you better. Some of you may or may not know the future growth areas that we established years past in the areas of Western Cabarrus County, Northwest Cabarrus County, and of course in Rowan County, what was previously known as our ETJ area, but also, or I say previous, will be after June 30th. We also have an agreement with Landis about our future growth area as well, and we did that back when we had the legislative land swap with them about 4 years ago. The areas to the west that are our future growth areas, so Highway 73 is the border, if you will, for the area north of that is our future growth area. South of that, Concord, except for the area of Kannapolis Parkway, that's their future growth area. We do have a annexation agreement not only with the town of Landis, but we have one that has been in effect for some time with the city of Concord. So the light blue you see on the map, you see the line running through the map there, that's the county line, but all the light blue in Rowan and Cabarrus County is our future growth area. The area shown in that lighter green color is actually our existing city limits area there. So this map gives you an idea of the utilities that are in those growth areas out in Cabarrus County. We don't have much in the way of utilities in Rowan County that are outside of our existing city limits, but it kind of gives you an idea if you look closely there as far as the blue lines. It's kind of faint on the map there, but you squint, you can kind of see it there type thing too. So now this map, I'm not going to bore you with the details of every zoning district that's out there, but this is one for me that's very important to point out to you. Particularly for the areas in Cabarrus County. So if you look west there, the teal color area, the Kelly green color area, those are areas in Cabarrus County that have the CR designation or the AO zoning designations. Those are larger lot size areas of Cabarrus County. In those zoning districts of Cabarrus County, in order to connect to municipal services, they have to be annexed into the city. So the county has a rule in place in their zoning district that says you cannot connect to municipal services unless you're in the municipal jurisdiction. So we've honored that by way of our voluntary annexations. The purple area you'll see on the map, especially in the Fishertown area, that's an area that's actually zoned like LDR. So that's the lower density residential. And as you'll see on this next schematic here, those districts are what I mentioned there, the AO, CR, and LDR. So under the first two, you see that they're basically do not permit public water and sewer in those areas. So annexation is the only way to get those services. Whereas the LDR district, it's an optional connection. I will tell you that third option is basically only applicable to smaller lot sizes. Any bigger development that occurs would still have to be annexed in because the county, again, does not allow public septic services. They prefer sewer service, which would be a public entity itself. They don't do like community systems and any of those. They would not approve that. So our current procedure, and we've been doing this for some time, is a resident will contact the city regarding water and sewer connections. To typically contact my office and my staff, we will talk to those folks. I'll normally meet with them about the annexation process. The standard operating procedure is for the application to be made for voluntary annexation prior to getting utilities connected to the site, to the house, if it's an existing house, or if it's a vacant lot, then certainly in that case as well. Benefits of this procedure, it basically helps us get a return on our past infrastructure investments in these areas made by the city 20 years ago. Western growth area in particular, let me go back to the map real quick because I probably should have pointed this out. So if you look at the green finger area, if you will, that's Lake Howell. So the entire area west of Bar Road and the entire area east of Odell School Road, that's pretty much a bowl. That's a watershed bowl. So we're not going to see much in the way of utilities ever being extended in those areas. We leapfrogged the lake, extended services out to that Shiloh Church Road, Odell School Road area west to the county line. We can't annex into Mecklenburg County, so we wouldn't do any of that anyway. We've done that as well as Concord has to extend services that in years past. We eventually started going further north there to the Wayne Brothers property as well. So, somewhat of a previous investment, if you will, of city in the past. So this kind of helps that and ensures our future growth in that area continues. These guidelines would be consistent with Cabarrus County guidelines. And then with the pending ETJ removal in Rowan County, this would be the only method to ensure future growth in Rowan County as well. So it kind of helps that part of the process. Here's some common questions I get in my office, or my staff does as well. What's the fee to annex? There's no fee to annex. There is a fee for rezoning. There is a fee for you to survey your property. Okay, so that does come into play there. But folks, generally, they're okay with that. And I will tell you, a lot of times folks talk to us about extending utilities, but some of them come talk to us as the golf course that was here tonight that you approved. They just want to be in the city of Kannapolis. They think it's the place to be. They like to have the address, and they like what we got going on. So they just wanted that presence in Kannapolis. So second question, how long does the annexation process take? Generally 30 days. You know that. We have a first reading in one of your meetings. Second meeting is when you do the public hearing. Are there fees associated with connecting to city water and sewer? Well, you just ad nauseum went through that, so I'm not going to have to elaborate on that. How long does it take to connect to city water sewer? It really depends on the workload and various other multiple factors there, if you will. Will my taxes increase? Of course, yes, there's a next layer of taxes because we're a city, and we basically, the way I always tell folks is counties by state statute are mandated. Cities are not. So we are incorporated. So when folks live here, they opt to live here under those guidelines, which include zoning, which include, these types of taxes and the services you just talked about for about an hour there as well. So other common questions, and we get this a lot: does the city extend sewer service if it's not in front of my house? The individual or the developer is responsible for doing those extensions. Can I connect to my neighbor's sewer and water? That's a common question we get. They cannot do that. They have to basically establish the service for themselves there. Do I have to pay the fee all at once, or is there any financial assistance? The fees are typically due all at once. We do have some grant opportunities through our community development office. In addition to that, the city has in the past, and we are looking at further exploring financial possibilities as far as financing goes, and the possibilities of doing that. We're coordinating that through our various departments and such too. And then lastly, how much does the survey cost? We can give them a range in my department because we deal with these prices, but that's typically up to the property and the shape of it and size, and of course the surveyor as well. So the proposal I would have with you is, if you're okay with it, would we move forward at your next meeting with a proposal from staff that basically asks City Council to adopt a resolution that basically says it's consistent with the current county guidelines. It memorializes our current practices to ensure the city's future growth in areas where utilities are presently located or can be extended to. So really want to basically establish it more as a formal policy. Right now, it's a standard operating procedure based on the county zoning, but we wanted to further solidify that. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have related to what I've mentioned here. So
Any questions? No questions? Okay. Guess we'll see you the next time about this.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Before we go to Mr. Melton, I was amiss. I should have mentioned this in the beginning of the meeting. You notice Mr. Davos not with us. He's probably with his two brand-new daughters somewhere. Him and his wife just welcomed two little twin girls last week, so keep them in your thoughts and prayers. I think everything's going pretty good. I can't imagine him holding a wrench in one hand and a girl in the other one. We'll see how this is going to work out. We'll see. I think everybody's doing really well, so I just want to make sure you all knew that. Now, Mr. Melton?
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier in the meeting, there were some questions regarding the sidewalk projects. I thought I would give an update. In fact, at one of our prior meetings, there was questions relative to the timing. So I wanted to share with you Little Texas Road, kind of where we are right now and when we anticipate getting to a construction phase with that. I know it seems as though it's been an extremely long time since we began the project to actually seeing concrete on the ground, and I do agree it certainly needs sidewalk in that area. But as I mentioned at prior meetings, I think there's a lot of excitement when we first get these grants, but I think when you start talking to residents and understanding what the true property impacts are, that's when it becomes reality that, well, wait a minute, to build that sidewalk, there's going to have to be some impact to my property. And with that, we are at Little Texas right now. We're in the right-of-way acquisition phase. We have those with the city attorney, and we anticipate to have all those finalized in the next 3 weeks so that we'll have everything recorded. Once we have all of those right-of-ways recorded on Little Texas, we then can begin our utility relocation for the project. We anticipate that to begin July of 2026 and then have that complete by January of 2027. I know that seems like it's a long time again, but it does take time when you're going to have to move utility lines. You may have to move other utilities that are in the way that impact, whether it be gas or it may be water that we're having with sidewalks. We typically don't worry about the water too much, but you certainly don't want to have a utility pole that's in the middle of your sidewalk area. So that's where we are there. The actual let date for construction, we expect that to be March of 2027, so first quarter of 2027 on that. Mid-Lake Road sidewalk, if you remember, we've got a surface transportation grant that was $5.8 million for that project. We expect to have the municipal agreement to City Council for consideration in July of 2026, preliminary engineering to begin in the first part of 2027, right-of-way second quarter of 2029. I know that's 2 years from the time frame that we first started, but again, you can imagine when you've got design work and you're trying to get to right-of-way phases, it does take time to get that. Utility relocation, we expect that to be April of 2031. and then the let date is December of 2031. And that, again, is the Mid-Lake Road Sidewalk project that we don't currently have agreements on yet, but we hope to have a little bit later or at the beginning of our fiscal year. Bethpage Road Sidewalk is very similar to Little Texas Road. We've been working on that one for a while. We anticipate right-of-way to be complete soon on that. Probably, I think we're looking at February of 2027. Utility relocation will begin on March 2027, with that work to be complete in September of 2027, and then a let date of November of 2027. The last thing that I'd like to mention as a part of my report is we had a meeting this past weekend with the Fishertown community, with Richard talking about annexation. Councilwoman Dixon and I attended a meeting there and heard from the community about their continued desires and interest in being in the city limits of Kannapolis, answered many of the questions that Richard's talked about relative to utilities, services that they would receive as being a part of a city resident in Kannapolis. So it was really well attended, and I think there's some continued and renewed interest in the community about being Kannapolis residents. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, I first want to thank everyone that spoke today and expressed their concerns. I just want to try to clarify a point with Eastside Park, and Mr. City Manager, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we did not say no to the Eastside Park. We just said not right now. Yes, we did receive federal funding for $500,000, but to build the park was going to cost us about $6 million on top of the annual operation cost, which is estimated at $300,000 a year. That means the $500,000 is less than 10% of the overall cost. We love our parks. We want to continue to provide these amenities to our residents, but at this moment, there are other critical areas that need our focus, like some you heard tonight, and public safety. We need to make sure our fire and police are taken care of so they can provide you all the highest level of safety you all need. We did not say no to the park, we just said not right now, even though some individuals may be spreading information without the full context. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I just want to clarify too, Mr. Melton, I know a couple of city councils ago, we did have where we talked about the Historical Society with the Wells Fargo, and well, not the Historical Society, but having the historical place with Wells Fargo. I know there were some budget numbers in there, but like we discussed, I just want the public to hear that that did not mean that's how much it would cost. Like that $2 million is not how much that is going to cost. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's money that we had allocated for the purpose. The building, again, is in relatively good shape. So in addition to that, we're also looking at grant opportunities, working with some others so we can help offset that cost. But that does not reflect that that's what it will cost. We have that available should we need it.
Okay, just want to make sure that was clear for everyone. And also, too, just clarity there, we talked about transportation. Remind me if I'm wrong, but we talked about transportation both days of our retreat that was public, like Mr. Goodman was there. So those meeting notes are available for anyone if you guys want to see where we stood with transportation. As most people know, when we have to deal with an attorney because of the contract, we have to go into closed session. So other than that, the rest of it was very transparent. I do want to thank a couple of people, a couple of our departments though. I had the pleasure of riding along with their fire department on Saturday. I just was very impressed with the care that they give to our community. But more than that, I also am thankful for the dispatchers that we had here earlier, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with them this week because without the dispatchers, the firemen wouldn't know where to go. So it was good to have them here tonight. And honestly, the best part of it is knowing that when our residents are truly having their worst day, we have the best in Kannapolis to answer the call, to be the call, to answer their questions. And then when I saw the care that the firemen gave to each of the people that they reached out to, it was amazing. So we are in good hands in Kannapolis, and I'm thankful for that for our residents. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Recently, Councilwoman Hatcher and I had the distinct privilege of sitting in on the CAPTA recertification for the Kannapolis Parks and Rec. And the two words that just continue to resonate with me is that Kannapolis met the gold standard, that they were stellar in their operation. There are 10 standards that each Parks and Rec commission is to that they're held accountable for, and I just pencil a few of them. Their human resources, their onboarding of staff and support of staff, their financial management, their land use, their unique activities and programs, their environmental impact, and they specifically mention the gym theater as being a jewel for our city, and that their connections with Gary Mills and his staff was outstanding. And so I just want to say, Gary's not here, but I see a member of his staff that is here to let you know that I really enjoyed hearing the report of the recreditation commission, and I think Councilwoman Hatcher would agree with me that just hearing the way that our Parks and Rec is operated, that we are definitely to be proud of Gary and his staff.
I agree. Ms. Berry?
Motion to enter into closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A3 to consult with an attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege.
Is there a second? Mr. Payne, all in favor, please raise your hand. We are now in closed session. Thank you for coming.